Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thank you so much. The purpose of our chats, okay, is to really record history, okay, to record some of the people and your experiences. And we have had, this is our third one. We have done merchants, and we probably have to do another merchants. Okay, we've done the lifeguards. We had lifeguards here to speak and tell us their experiences, and we're videoing everything. Okay, so hopefully, there's a videographer over there. We're going to be able to, Joey Miller. We're young Joey Miller. Well, young, that's a terrible thing to say. Okay. Anyway, so we're going to hopefully put it all on YouTube so that we have history, and those people who are on those websites, if you grew up in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, then you know, they can see their friends, so it should be a lot of fun. Okay, this is an informal chat. However, we have to time everyone, all right, a little bit, because we have so many eager speakers, which is fabulous. Okay, so we're going to ask everyone to speak for about 7 to 10 minutes of your own experiences, okay? And then, and without interruption, because what happens is when someone starts to talk, then they say, oh yeah, I remember that, and everybody kind of, you know, and it promotes too much interruption. All right, so we want to hear everyone's experiences. And also, we realize that a lot of people who we have here don't, you know, you're not just firemen, you're coaches, and you know, you volunteer here and there, and you have other jobs sometimes. So we'd like you to talk about your community connections, okay, a little bit. Okay, I know, where's my friend Ralph, worked in the Theater Guild for so long, but you all have other connections, and so we're trying to, you know, integrate that into the chats, okay? So again, I'm going to turn it over to Joe Miller, because he knows each of you, so he'll sort of moderate, okay? There you go.
Thank you very much. I'm Joe Miller from the Long Beach Fire Department. I'm the current fire commissioner. Historical Society has been very helpful to me with doing research in the fire department with our history. And when they approached me about doing this, I thought it was a great idea. We do have a bunch of senior members that will like to talk, and they definitely will talk your ear off if given enough time. So for tonight, I have ex-Chief Romano Leverage, ex-Captain Nick Gaudiosi, ex-Captain Dave Wagner, ex-Captain Jeff Davis, ex-Chief James H. Jacoby, ex-Captain Ralph Isaacs, ex-Deputy Chief Sid Langstein, Firefighter Edmund Sullivan, and ex-Chief Jim Moriarty. Our oldest here tonight is Sid Langstein, who joined the department in 1956. And then we have members that joined in the 60s, 70s, and two in the 80s. But with that, you know, for you guys, Sid, I would ask that you started off telling us your experience joining the fire department, what it was like. I know when you joined, it was also the old City Hall. City Hall, the new one hadn't been built yet. I think they still had horses.
Oh, no.
That was when I was born in the Bronx.
They did.
We moved out here, my parents, I, my brothers, my two sisters, when I was 13. But we were coming out for the summer for a couple of years before that. I went to Long Beach High School. At that time it was Lindell Junior High. Graduated there. Started college, but then one of my friends talked me into going in the Army. Went in the Army, did 2 years there, came out, and the same friend that talked me in there got out a month before me from the Army, and he was in Hose Company in the West End, and he said, you got to join this thing, this is great. So February, I got out in January, February 54 was?
56.
56. I joined, and I've been a member ever since. The highest rank I had was, at that time, there was deputy chiefs, from company 1 and company 2. Now it's strictly all chiefs, no deputies. They're all younger than me. Being in the fire department, I've met a lot of people. We've had a lot of incidents down here in the past years. We lost a few firemen at the exempt hall. After you're in 5 years as a volunteer, you can become an exempt member from New York State. We also have a building down on West Park, down by the library. That's for the exempt members. People that have put in a lot of time and they just can't make calls, or they can't fight a fire at that time, or if they're on medical, and they become an exempt member. Most of everybody sitting up front and a few here, including Jimmy, were all members that came in after me. But mainly, we did it because we liked the fire department. And we did it because I guess that was our calling. Because not too many people do that. Nick Audiosi was a paid fireman in the city. That's it. And Jake was a paid fireman also, not in the city. But everybody else is a volunteer. Am I timed yet?
What was your most memorable fire? Sid?
Probably the President Hotel.
President Hotel.
Where was that?
It was
Broadway.
on Broadway.
That's where the city has their trailer right now to get their beach passes.
Yeah.
What year was that? You know?
I think 63, somewhere between 63 and 65.
I happened to be at that time, Herbie Goldstein, the dentist, was an assistant chief, deputy chief. And I happened to be in his office at that time. And what happened was the alarm went off. At that time we had the book, so this is a copy of the book that I have. You can see it's all with the numbers. So in this particular one, it had down commissioners. Harry Yeoman, who some people may know, Charlie Lynch,
There was Long Beach Appliance or National Home Appliance.
Marty Held, Jack Alterac at that time was the chief, Mo Bodenstein, he was the paid captain, myself, first deputy chief, Larry Zuckerman was second deputy, and the committee for doing the books was Eli Alterac, Lee Adias, Normie Goodman, and John Rush.
Do you want to donate that to our archives?
Good names.
That's the only one I have with my name on.
Oh, okay. Well, give us one of the other ones. Give us one of your other ones that doesn't have your name then. But
Ralph?
anyway, that's fabulous.
I guess
How about you
since
go?
we're going senior, I'm in 62, you have to think. I'm in 62 years. I joined in 1960. I was still going to college at the time. Eventually, I became a, what we now call a technology teacher. I was a shop teacher for the old timers. And I used to sit up in Indiana Firehouse. I was in part of Post 2 at the time. And I'd sit marking my papers. The horn would go off, I'd put the papers down, go downstairs, hop in the truck, go to the fires. Jake here was just showing a lot of the fires he got from his brother, who basically is a historian on fires in Long Beach. And you start thinking, as many fires as we had very few, we did have some, very few loss of people. And one President Hotel that was brought up, there was one woman who was found later on in her bathtub, because somewhere, I guess somebody said the bathroom in the bathtub is safe. And the smoke got to her. So that I remember. There were a few others. And as I said, I started out in what was called hose company, which was an engine. In other words, it did pumping. It also carried a lot of hose on it to stretch from the fire hydrant to the fire, or you'd go from the fire hydrant to another truck, which would go to the fire, depending upon how many hoses, how much water you needed at the fire. President Hotel fire was a big fire. We brought in mutual aid, which Long Beach is part of what they call the 2nd Battalion, which is Island Park, Oceanside, I was gonna see it's right. Point Lookout, Lido, Baldwin, and Freeport. And whenever you have a fire or you need an additional ambulance or truck, those are the first ones you call. Eventually the dispatcher, when you go 2nd alarm, 3rd alarm, they have a list of what departments you call in, so you don't strip the whole area. Because if you took everybody from the 2nd Battalion, this surrounding community, and they had a call, they would have nothing to start. So you always don't take everything, you take some trucks, what you need, and you just keep bringing in from further out. I can remember I think at one point we had some trucks in from Garden City. I don't remember the fire, but what was it, 55 Broadway was a big one. 55 West Broadway, 225 West Park. The Breakers, which I just mentioned, I wound up parking over there, so I remember that. These are some of the fires that you weren't done in an hour. You actually weren't done in a day, and some of these were in the middle of the winter where you froze your butts off. Your coats with the snaps and everything were sheets of ice. And you just kept moving on and doing what you had to do. The crews that are inside would rotate, people from outside would go in, your mutual aid company would rotate with them, so you don't get exhausted. What has been created probably in the last 5 or 10 years, what we call a rehab unit. Our fire communications unit, which right now is in Maple, we have a cooler on there, which is electric, but it also works on battery. We keep Gatorade and water in there. So when you have a major fire, you don't want to dehydrate your firemen. Whether it's the middle of the winter or a hot summer day, we have that. When we get there, Jeff can tell you much more on that at the command post, what happens. But I also had my job, which I was a school teacher.
Lawrence.
And Ginny and I taught together for many years. And obviously the horns go off. I had a pager. The kid says, "What's that?" I said, "It's a fire." "Where?" So you give him a little explanation. "Are you going?" I said, "No, I got to take care of you brats." I felt like saying that at times, but I didn't. This was middle school kids.
They probably said it to you.
But over the years lately, with age, I've slowed down a bit because I can't do, well, we don't have too many young kids here anymore today. But what the young kids can do. I used to be on the tournament team in the 60s. I think Sid and I figured we are the two active or semi-active members, it's not a word, but in the department. Sid's down the firehouse all the time. I just basically came back after COVID. I'm starting to run on calls again. But as with age, you can't always run. And some of the middle-aged kids, which I can look at a few, don't run as much as they used to do when they were in their 20s. And I think we've all realized that as we get older, we've got to slow down. I had a business in town at one time, ALI Fire and Burger Alarm, if anybody remembers. I think I lost a lot of business by being too dedicated to the fire department. And things like that, you just have to set your priorities, which I didn't. And I'm sure there are a lot of people that we have seen come and go with it. And I guess that's about what I can say. Jake?
Jimmy.
Jimmy's next.
I think Jeff by seniority.
Jeff is going to be up next.
Do you want to give out the phone number, the local phone number?
For me?
For them to call, 889?
516-889-7800 is the fire alarm number. You can call
Fire,
the dispatcher.
emergency, medical help, it's all there. Try to avoid calling the police department because they just answer your call, then they have to pass it on to us, so you lose 30 seconds to a minute. Here's our police
All
dispatcher.
right, let's check in with Jeff.
I came in the at the middle '60s. It's how I came in. It was the guy across the street. Some of you guys may remember him, Eddie Van Wagner. Comes over to me and says, "How old are you?" I said, "I just turned 18 today." He says, "He's coming into the fire department." So it was about 3 days later they had the meeting and I got sworn in. When I got sworn in, like Isaac's here, I went into hose 2. Hose 2 at the time was a 500-gallon pumper. It was a Ford chassis with an American LaFrance pump on it. This truck it was like a utility truck with a pump on it. That's how small this thing was. Carried hose. We always tried to make it to the fire because sometimes it didn't start, so we had to literally push it down the street, pop the clutch, and get it going. And we got it to the scene. And once we got it to the scene, it pumped. You know, but this is what we had to do at that time. I used that for a couple of years. Also, when I first came into the department, we didn't even have gear. I had nothing. The way we fought the fire was just like you see me now. This is how we went into fires. It didn't matter how big it was, what you had to do, you just walked into the fire. You had nothing. After a while, we started getting the gear with the coats and the hip boots and all that stuff. Then from that truck, we went to a truck called the Young. This was a bigger truck, 1,000-gallon pumper, 4-wheel drive. We used to take that truck on the beach. We had fires on the beach. We fought it from the beach. One day, he could tell you, we had a fire at the Breakers Hotel. Right next to the Breakers was a big sand line. Pulled that truck right into the sand line. Thing pumped like anything. It was one of our last shift trucks. This thing was like, what, 5 speeds, and it was called, some people double clutched this truck. This is how they drove it. Truthfully, I never did. If you got the RPMs right, you didn't even need the clutch. You just went right into gear. That's the way this truck was. But you had to get the RPMs right to do that. Otherwise, you're going to grind the gears to anything.
And City Garage would hate you for that.
City Garage didn't even know we did that. Another time when we pumped that truck was at the school, and the instructor says, "You're pumping too high. Too much water's coming out. The truck is revving. Could you cut it down?" I said, "No." He says, "Why?" I said, "I never throttled it up." This is how that truck pumped. It had a 1,000-gallon pump. Today they use 1,500s, but this thing pumped like anything. After that, we had a Mack real bomb. Real bomb. We had that for a few years, and then we got the Pierce. That was some truck. That I have to say, that was actually one of the best engines that I ever been on. That truck handled nicely, pumped nicely, very easy. Had a mid-mount pump, so you could stand on top of the truck and watch it all the way around. You could see everything. At a fire one time in the West End, it was called the Emmett's Meat Packing Company. I was on the line, right in front of the place. All of a sudden, an explosion happened. I went flying across Beach Street. Fortunately, I didn't get hurt, but I ended up in the store across the street. It just blew. And other incidences, of course, I guess that's about it.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Chief?
I'm a 52-year member of the fire department, although the truth is I haven't been active in many, many years.
I was chief back in the early 1980s. I became a member in January of 1970, and before that, I was what was called the Explorer Post, Junior Fire Department. I think when I started in 9th grade. So I've been involved in Long Beach, a lot of organizations, you know, the usual Knights of Columbus, Hibernians. I was on the Recreation Commission, a city councilman, ex-chief. You know, I've been always involved, but the fire department is what I always loved. I wanted to be a volunteer fire department since I was a little child. I mean, when I was in high school, you know, Sid talks about the horns, the codes that, you know, we used to have. I had them all memorized. Every single street in the town had its own code. So you can imagine, you know, 1111 was Nevada Avenue and 6666 was Maple Boulevard, or up around there. But when I came in, that's when we, a few years earlier, they changed over to what they call plectrons, radios that used to go off in your house. And, you know, you just couldn't wait for that sound to go off so you could run out. It didn't matter the weather, the time of the day, or anything. It was just great. You know, one of the things, you know, people wonder, I mean, it's just got to be in your blood. The adrenaline, or, you know, people do talk about the satisfaction and all the good public service you do and all that. But a big part of it is that rush that you get from fighting a fire, working closely with people. I mean, when you go into a fire in a smoky building and you do this day after day, year after year, you get a certain bond with people, and you really do make lifelong friends. I've made friends that many, unfortunately, are deceased now. But you know, you make a bond with people, and even people that in the old days, you know, when we were young firefighters, there was a lot of competition. You know, my truck happened to be the best in the department, so always jealous.
In your mind.
Always jealous. But you know, I always set kid around. You know, when you were going up the ranks, there was a lot of competition. The further I got away from being chief, the more popular I got, you know, because people, you know, there wasn't this competition anymore. There were so many good fires that I'll just go through. I had to jot them down because the more I started thinking, oh, what about this one? What about that? What was the biggest one you had and stuff like that? But one of the things that people don't realize is, you know, the volunteers and the paid, they work well together. There's always an occasional competition or, you know, some interesting sidebars, but they do work well together, and to me, it's the best combination of people. But as far as the experience that these guys go through, I mean, you know, they really do, you know, it sometimes sounds cliche, but they risk their lives. And we've had firefighters here, you know, die in the line of action. You know, Phil Cohn is one who comes to mind. He died in the Beach House fire. The Beach House bar, the original one, was down on was it Minnesota? Virginia. Okay. Jeannie used to hang out there all the time. She knows exactly where it was. So, you know, like I said, you know, you risk your life, and my wife said not to mention this, you know, and maybe it's a mistake or not, but people don't realize, you know, the experiences, bad experiences that a lot of firefighters go through. I mean, you know, you think mostly just of, you know, a fire and somebody dying in a fire, but, you know, I know everybody here has experienced, I mean, you know, and another fireman who died, and I remember I was at this fire, it was a mutual aid to Point Lookout, Georgie Grant. He was about 23, 24 years old. I think I was 2 years older than him. And I remember me and Howie Hemsley were at that house fire in Point Lookout. He died 42 years ago, I think it was. And, you know, it was a house fire. It was a bad house fire, but, you know, we ended up, Long Beach was sent back. We were done with our end, and Point Lookout was still there. It was the next day that I found out that he died after we left. So even though we thought the fire was done, I mean, the fire was still going on, but they didn't need the mutual aid. But this guy was on the second floor and the floor collapsed and he died. He was only 23 years old. If he was still around, he'd be probably 67 years old. So, you know, I just think, you know, sometimes we take for granted the job that these guys do. And the kind of things, you know, it's not just fires. I mean, you know, we've seen so many things like, you know, I mean, Ralph mentioned that we haven't had too many deaths, but I can think of every death that I was not involved, but you know, participated in a fire, and I mean, there's nothing more gruesome than seeing somebody burned to death. You know, I mean, it's the most horrible thing you could see, and in particular, small babies. And Ralph mentioned the case with the baby in the tub, and I remember we had a baby at 101 National Boulevard. We had a big fire there. It was on where the condominiums or townhouses are on National and Broadway, diagonally across from the hotel. We had a real big fire there, and we took everybody out, but we, for whatever reason, a baby didn't make it out, and we didn't find that baby for hours after the fire was out. But then, you know, people hanging, drownings, people jumping off of buildings. I mean, I remember one time we were drilling at the building next to, you know, I used to know every building address by heart, but, you know, so many buildings have changed over. But the building next to the Magnolia Park, we were drilling on top of the building, you know, going over the side of the building and rappelling down the side of the building. And while I was on the top, I remember, I think it was Howie Emsley, I don't want to use the curse words, he said, "Did you see that?" I said, "See what?" He goes, "A guy just jumped off the building. He jumped off 101 National Boulevard while we were drilling on Magnolia Boulevard." I said, "You're crazy." And sure enough, you know, we ran downstairs, one guy killed himself, jumped off the building. So you see all this, and shootings, I mean, you know, so many. In fact, there was a shooting right around this building. Is the yellow building right? Yeah, this is Magnolia, what's this, Magnolia on the corner of Laurelton. I mean, you know, so you see so many different types of tragedies, and you know, they all stick in my mind. I mean, I haven't been active, like I said, in many years, but I can remember every single one of those things. As far as history of the fire department, because that's why we're here, you know, probably one of the more memorable things is for the only time in the history of the city of Long Beach, the volunteer fire department went on strike. And that was a pretty dangerous time back in around 1978. The relationship between the volunteer fire department and the city at the time, the city leaders got to be so bad, and in particular, I think it dealt with the police commissioner. And I don't want to go through every detail, but for volunteer firemen who are volunteering to do something that they love, for them to basically go on strike, you know, is you know, it was a pretty horrible time in the history of Long Beach, because they went on strike for more than a few days. The governor had to send the Secretary of State, the Chief Fire Administrator down, and we had negotiations go on, and it was a very tenuous time. Luckily, there were no bad fires and no, you know, and I don't know if there had been a big fire, you know, the strike probably would have been called over immediately, but nonetheless, that was a memorable time in the history. We're talking about the history. And yeah, and the other thing was the combining of the two East End and West End fire departments. I mean, basically, there were two fire departments. There were two companies. The East would elect an assistant chief, the West would elect an assistant chief, and everybody would be a chief. Everybody would vote for the chief. So, you know, really, a lot of times, only half the department would be electing their assistant chief that they'd have to put their lives in their hands. And the biggest fire, the first fire that I had coming in, the biggest was the West End Movie Theater, the Northwest Theater.
1972.
And that was in
72.
It wasn't in 71? In June of
I
71?
could be wrong. I thought I was 18.
I think it was 17.
So long
There was
ago.
probably another one going in the bars, but no, I think it was June of 71, but I could be wrong, because I came in January. But that was the first biggest fire I was ever involved in, and the whole thing just burned to the ground. And the last one, when I was chief, was the Atlantic Beach Club fire, which also burned to the ground. Just the chimney was
You
standing.
mean the Atlantic Beach Hotel? Or
At the Atlantic Beach Club, Atlantic Beach Club. That was a New Year's Day. The day that was celebrated, like January 2nd, 10 a.m. in the morning, and a snowy day, and that thing was just billowing. It was a big barn in effect, and it's just, you know, one of the biggest fires we had. So I'll turn it over to the next one.
Were you in, when we went to bowling alley, Tony?
No. I know the bowling alley fire. There was so many big fires. I mean, an Arrow Steakhouse. Remember the Arrow Steakhouse?
70s was bad.
Yeah, I mean, just quick addresses and I'll wrap up because I did write this down.
Remember that?
Associated
In
with West End? Yeah, that was Minero's Steakhouse.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
became
that
a
was
street
Minero's.
town.
I thought Minero's was on Illinois and Associated
Used to
was
be in
2
East
blocks
Atlantic.
down.
Used to
I was 12 years old, I remember what I had on.
Right, okay. So, and then Paparaldo's fire, which was, that was the old Finnan's
That was
Blood.
like
That was probably one of the
1976.
most dangerous fires because houses would start to catch on fire, their roofs. What's that on the one on Arizona? Yeah, and that was the.
It was during a nor'easter, right?
Yep, I don't remember the weather, but I just remember the entire, that looked like the West End could really burn
Well,
down.
spark hit a house on Arizona and the house
Correct.
blew up.
Correct. And there's there's other fires, but there's a million fires in this town, so that's, you know, I'll let the other guys touch on some of the other fires.
Chief Leverage.
Yes, sir. I am here. I got interested in the firemen and fighting fires when I was a little boy. My father worked in a shipyard in Croatia, and the beginning of the shipyard was a firehouse. I used to bring him lunch because my school was at night, my classes. The town was a little one. So there was a school in the morning and then I had the afternoons. So I bought lunch and I used to go and hang out with the firemen there. And then we came to United States in the 70s. And we lived in Astoria for a while. Then my father got a job for the school district, and we moved to Long Beach. And I hang out with a lot of people in Long Beach. I made a lot of good friends. And then I found out that there's a room for me in the fire department. And next year it'll be 50 years. And I got stationed at headquarters. Really didn't like it. Too many gold shields there, so I said I need to go to Station 2. So they put me at Station 2, and I've been a member ever since then of on the truck company. The biggest fire is 66 Shore Road, where me and my partner got trapped on the 3rd floor. Condition changed. He went one way and I went another way. And I remember counting the doors to the middle of the hallway, finding the fire door, and then I made the left turn to go down the hallway, and that's how I got out. Many fires, a lot of good fires, and a lot of stories. But the main thing is, you know, until the next calling, I'll be doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nick?
Okay, would you just say everyone's names because it's.
Okay. Next will be Dick Gordiosi.
All right. I was born and raised in the Bronx, and my family moved to Long Beach in 1974 full time. But we had been coming to Long Beach summers since I was 2 years old. So since about 1958. We moved here, and I had given no thought to being a volunteer fireman or any other kind of fireman. I was in college, and but my cousin Rich DeBarry and my brother Rob joined the volunteers, and a couple of years later, they convinced me to join the volunteer fire department, mainly to bring a girl to the installation dinner. The relationship with her didn't last long, but my relationship with the fire department has lasted since 1976. Made a lot of good friends, knew a few guys when we first got on. Jimmy and I we had a very tight-knit group in Engine 2. My brother was in Engine 2, Jimmy's brother. Joe Sauter, who was mentioned, Joe's brother-in-law, Kevin Toth, was the captain.
So, and we were like a group within a group. We definitely had more courage than brains, and one of the paid lieutenants gave us a nickname of the Suicide Squad, which rather than be insulted, we embraced. So, and it's carried on to this day. Definitely, once I got into the fire department, other than living in the Bronx and seeing a lot of fires, didn't know anybody in the fire department, had no relatives, just my brother and my cousin and the volunteers here. And then once I got in and with these guys, it was like a team, it was a tight-knit group. It was a lot of fun. In the mid to late 70s, Long Beach was at its busiest and the busiest department on Long Island. And that's what made it fun. Fighting a fire was like a team. There was danger, but when we were together, we didn't have any fear. Kevin Toth got a bunch of guys interested in taking the test in New York City. I was one of them. And in 1979, I became a New York City fireman. And I definitely feel that going to fires for 3 years with these knuckleheads prepared me well. Prepared me well for when I went to my first fire in New York. It wasn't my first fire, so the experience definitely helped. I retired from New York City in 2003 as a captain, and I've been involved in fire safety since. One of the things Jimmy mentioned was the strike. To put it in perspective, the reason for the strike was that there was a contentious relationship with the city government. Our equipment was horrible. The gauges on the trucks didn't work. You had to step on the hose to see if it had enough pressure. Equipment was hand-me-down stuff. And then it came to a head when the police commissioner had one of the guys, you know how collect money on Memorial Day, the boot drive and everything? Yeah, we'll have one of the guys arrested for pandering. Okay, so like that brought it to a head. We were so, it wasn't overpay or anything like that. So it was, we're volunteering on time, and a little appreciation, would have been nice. One of my most memorable fires, and again, we all have a lot of the same experiences, was 55 Broadway. Was that February of 78?
February 4th, 1978.
Kevin Toth's birthday.
Yeah.
We were at his house. We were at his house celebrating, and then as soon as we got home and went to sleep, the plectron went off, out we go, top floor fire, a lot of fire in the building, big apartment house fire. There was a loss of life, a couple of people died that were in the apartment above the fire. I think it was hook and ladder one, fell off the building, collapsed. The building was collapsing while we were in it fighting the fire. But again, we were just, young idiots, and we just kept doing what we were doing. None of us got hurt. But during the fire, a blizzard hit. And we had snow on Broadway higher than cars. And for a number of us, it was like continuous duty for like
11 days.
11 days, yeah. If you didn't have a job, we were all in our 20s, so I was in college, we didn't have anywhere to go, so we were just hanging out in the firehouse, like real fun. But one thing I did learn, is that the fire doesn't know where it's being fought, whether it's in New York City or in Long Beach. It's the same fire. You have to do the same thing to put it out. And the efforts the guys give are the same. The fire doesn't give you a break because you're a volunteer. So made some lifelong friends, and I made a career of it and enjoyed every minute of it. Wouldn't change it at all.
Wow.
That's my story.
All right, next up will be Chief Jake Jacoby. Please keep it clean.
I'll try. My story is similar to Nick. I grew up in the Bronx. My father was a New York City police officer. Come from a family of public servants. We moved out here in, I think, '74, full-time, but we had a bungalow in the West End since the early '60s. My brother joined the volunteer fire department when he was 18, 3 years older than me, so for 3 years I had to watch him run out the door when the horns went off or the plectron went off. I could not wait to turn 18 to become a fireman. Like Jimmy said, it's in your blood, you know, public service, it's in you, it's a calling. So at age 18, I believe it was October, November of 1976, I joined the fire department and was assigned to Engine 2 in the West End with a great group of guys. For me, it was a camaraderie, like Jimmy said, it's a fraternal institute, the fire service. I mean, I always say, I feel like my brothers are the ones that, when the stuff hits the fan, and the guy who's in front of you and the guy who's behind you, and you have to hit the deck, those are your true brothers. Those are the guys that you can trust with your life. A lot of fires in the early 70s, late 70s, early 80s, Long Beach was burning like the South Bronx. It really was. 522 Shore Road, 55 West Broadway, Paparaldo's was March of 1980, 226, the Breakers Hotel, March 3rd, 77. Chief Loveridge and a crew of guys removed 23 elderly people from that building in 30 minutes as the fire burned. And I have that citation in here. 666 Shore Road, 170 East Market Street, 1979. I fell through the stairwell and I have 22 stitches and the scars to prove it in my hands. There was numerous fires. Paparaldo's was a tough one. Like Nick said, it was Kevin's birthday. We used to stick together like glue, the West End Firehouse. There wasn't enough room on one truck for us to get out the door. There was so many guys. We used to ride the back step with the day boots and the rubber coats and the orange fireball gloves that you'll see. And leather helmets is a tradition in the fire service. And everybody wanted a leather helmet. And getting it dirtier, the dirtier you got it, the better it was. It was a salty door. You clean somebody's helmet in the firehouse, you're going to pay the price. Don't touch anyone's gear. That's all I can tell you. But it's just a great thing to be part of. I've been in the fire service 46 years. My brother went on to become a career firefighter. I myself became a career firefighter and then returned to the volunteers after I retired. Probably seen countless dead bodies. Picked up dead bodies. The thing that sticks with me is children, because not only do we fight fires, we run EMS calls, we do drownings, we do numerous things, you know, as far as fire and EMS to help people. You call, we come. You know, I don't wish a fire on anyone, but if you're gonna have it, I wanna be there. You know, I mean, and that's the way it is. It's in your blood. You don't wish any bad luck on anyone. But if there's something bad's gonna happen, we wanna be there. And that's just the way it is. It's like you like your job as an accountant, you know, all the numbers, they'll make my head explode. Like Nick said, it's a lot of common sense and brawn, you know, but mostly common sense. And we look out for each other like we're true brothers. That 666 Shore, I mean, on 55 West Broadway, there was 3 victims. 2, I'll never forget this, we stayed there for the 11 days during the blizzard hit the following day. The night of the fire, the snorkel was up at the roof. I believe it was Danny Lawson in the bucket, and all the boys bailed off the roof when the roof collapsed into the bucket. 5 guys overweighted the bucket, but that's what we do. What are you gonna say? Stay here, I'll be right back to get the rest of yours? No, they all jumped on and, you know, hope for the best, and they got down, thankfully, alive. So the next day, we found out there were people missing. They had a trailer set up out front for a command post. Like Ralph was saying, our coats were frozen solid. We had the mustaches going on back then, and they were all frozen. But for 11 days, we dug in the rubble looking for those victims. And I remember distinctly like it was yesterday, myself and Hank Warrington, God bless him, putting those bodies in the body bag, picking them up, and their skin, I hope it doesn't freak anyone out, but the skin stuck to the hardwood floor like pizza cheese. They were next to each other holding hands. And then the other woman he spoke about, she put herself in the bathtub and towels up against the door because that's what they used to think would save them, but really the smoke is what killed them. 101 National, Jimmy spoke about that. It was a mother of 4. She saved 3 of her children. The oldest one, the 1-year-old child, she went back in for, and she got all burned up. They had to drag her out because she wanted to go back in that room that was on fire, but they couldn't let her, and the child burned to death. I mean, it's devastating, but this is what we do. The camaraderie is the most thing that I love. I know that I can call anybody and ask them for a favor, and they would be there for me. And that's the best thing about the fire service. Other than that, what we do is what we do. I could sit here and tell you stories forever. But Papa Aldo's, I was the first in on that. We were coming from a fire in the center of town. Myself was in the front seat, and Sean Ryan, God rest his soul, was driving the engine. And we got the tones dropped at Lindell Boulevard. We were heading west to the firehouse. And we got to New York Avenue. We could not see literally a hand in front of our face because the smoke was banked down from Arizona Avenue all the way up to New York Avenue. We crawled in on Park Avenue. There was a hydrant right directly in front. We're talking a 2-story, 2.5-story, 2-story wood frame building that would shake, and they were shellacking the bar is what that was. They were shellacking the bar that day. That's what started the fire. But it was just pushing all smoke out. So we hook up, we go in, there was no flames yet. If you see on our computer, some of the pictures, it was insane. It was a wind-driven, it was a south wind off the bay, and that fire took off. Snorkel was right at the butt end of Arizona. There was a Grand Prix and another car. I forget the car it was, but it sticks in your head. The paint and windows started cracking on it, just melting all the paint off. Cracked the windows in 7-2. They had to back that out. We had to chop the hose line off the hydrant and get 4-2 out of there because the paint and everything was started bubbling. And I believe you said the embers, it was 2x4 embers blowing down the block. We had another house fire down the block. Again, nights were never ending with fires. And thankfully, fire prevention, education, and sprinkler systems has changed that. Long Beach does not burn like that anymore. Yes, there were countless lives saved in Long Beach because of volunteer firefighters. Because it just wouldn't happen without that many guys. If you never done the job, you don't realize how many people it takes to move a hose line in, to cut a roof, to do what we do. Again, I could sit here and tell you stories all night because I love that, but if you do, my brother is Chuck Jacoby. He had that I Love Long Beach, New York website. He puts a lot of historical stuff up there about fires and just everything. I know some people in the room know him, right? So, but I'm the guy that does the work. He's the guy that does the work. I'm the guy you see. But anyway, it's a pleasure sitting up here with these guys. And I'm very proud to sit here with them. Thanks.
Thank you, Jake.
One quick comment that Jake mentioned about the bar, the West End Bowling Alley. They were refinishing the lanes when that fire came up.
We had 2 fires.
High explosive.
1 week we had it, we knocked it down. A couple of weeks or a week later,
That was
it
Wednesday.
gone.
The rest of it was Saturday. They continued doing what they were doing.
All right, next we're going to Captain Dave Wagner.
How you doing? Like the rest of these guys, I came from the Bronx also. Most of these guys came from the Bronx. We moved here in '72. So went through the school system here, turned 18, 19. A couple of my friends were at Station 2. Why don't you come join? Why don't you come join? So, what the hell, come join? I was in the department 3 days. had my first single tent, my first work of fire, which was the Capri Beach Club. It was like 2:30 in the afternoon. And there was no gear. Grab somebody else's gear, grab somebody else's boots, grab a helmet, grab whatever you can grab, get upstairs. Trial and error. Can you handle it? Can you not handle it? And I just watched the fire roll across the rafters. One of the guys from the company, Lumpy, hits me across the head. He says, "You gonna stare at that fire? You gonna put it out?" And I'm like, "Okay." So anyway, that started along. A lot of camaraderie. A lot of people you learn over the years. I've had the honor of these three guys here, my first 5 years of being my officers, and it just goes on. Next month I'll have 41 years in the fire service. Right now I've helped with a lot of the training committees. On the training committees we do to keep vigilant in the different operations in the fire service. Everybody does some sort of training rotation. I like to do drafting, which is pulling water out of the bay and able to use that water to put out a fire, as well as doing foam drills in case we have a hazardous type material fire where we have to apply foam on it, fuel oils, hydrocarbons, that kind of stuff. So that's pretty much my training portion. Fires. Boy, there were a lot of fires. Same fires that these other guys all talk about. The beach, Atlantic Beach Club that Jimmy was talking about. We rolled in first too. We put that first line in through the kitchen. Boy, there was a lot of fire in there. Subsequently, we had to put that out with Master Streams. My most memorable, though, I would have to say, was Between the Ribs, which is on Magnolia Park where Rock and Olive are now. And if you ever go into Rock and Olive, you can actually see the stain, the burn stains all the way up to the rafters. But what was so memorable, and it wasn't a very huge fire, it was a nice sized fire, but you pulled up and the whole roof was charged, completely advanced, and the people were still eating their dinners. They had to send 2 crews in there to get everybody out of there. Yeah, that's it. I mean, it was a free dinner. Get out. That was it. They were still eating dinner. They sent 2 crews in there. We wound up, our company wound up going up to the chemist there, and we were able to get into the cop off that way. But that was probably one of the most funny things I've ever seen. They're just sitting there chowing down. Nothing in the world is happening. There are a lot of memories here. These guys, I'll tell you what, every one of the members of the fire department do their due diligence to stay active, protect the city, and really do what we got to do all for now. Because we want to, because we love it, because it's in it. You're not going to go someplace where everybody's trying to run out of, unless you got a half a nut loose. Community-wise, I stayed here since then. I married, my 3 daughters went through the school system here. So I was involved in some of the stuff that they were involved. Got to know a lot of people beyond the many happy people I knew in high school that were parents at the same time as me. So it's like, oh, I didn't know any. So that's pretty much it.
So they say when people run out, you guys run in.
That's one more.
Yep. Last one I got. Edmund Sullivan.
I'm like a preschooler compared to when I joined, Romano was my captain at 7-2, and then I started working in the city garage, and they said, "Oh, you got to join the fire department." Okay, so I joined the fire department. I got sent down to 7-2. First fire, I think the second night in, the first fire, get in.
Okay.
And then before we were in a burning house. I think it was John Elgers. But anyway, yeah, it was a lot of good times, a lot of camaraderie. I went through 4-2. I was on 4-1 for a while, a lieutenant, and ended on Floodlight. But yeah, I went to the Trade Center with 2 days over there. I did a couple of things. I remember one time we were doing that accident on Park Avenue and we were taking the guy out of the driver's seat, and I had a Halligan under the hood to keep the hood off the battery because it was shorting out. Yeah, it was some wild times. The Suicide Squad, we had the, I know I got the picture here. I didn't know who was going to be here, but anyways, I don't know if you guys wanted to look at that. We set a car on fire. And it was just, the guys we were transitioning from the turnout coats to bunker gear. So only 4 guys had bunker gear. It was me and Jake and Ricky and Mike up on the roof.
Yeah, we set the car on fire ourselves to take the company.
It was
My
filled
boot
with
melted
packing
to the roof.
skids and, oh my God, the things that we did. Then when we were at the building next to City Hall, when they were letting us burn that,
The drill.
and I remember we were setting some fires. We were out for 3 or 4 weeks picking up old furniture, packing skids. When we made a fire, that was a fire. And I was sitting out front, there used to be those telephone poles in the ground, and I was sitting there and all of a sudden, poof! What the heck? And then we were letting the rescue squad was going to do the last rotation, and all of a sudden they screamed, "Get in there! It's real!"
The drill is over.
The whole room exploded. But yeah, we had some crazy times, burning cars and yeah.
The cars are donated. We didn't take some.
It never came to that.
Live fire training.
Yeah, we used to burn a lot of things and train. It was the good old days.
You brought a shirt. Did you bring a shirt?
Yeah, well, I was remembering different shirts because a lot of people lost stuff. Originally, this was the West End.
Yosemite Sam.
Yeah, and then it switched. And then it switched over to the Suicide Squad
Oh,
again.
yes, somebody said
It had the little beret on there. Like I said, it's camaraderie, it's a lot of fun. You pick on each other, but you still went in and did your job. Always a good laugh down there.
I think Jake's got one more thing.
I just wanted to mention some names and mentors that I didn't think to earlier that really should be mentioned in the room. Jerry LaMagna, Gary Rooney was the fire chief, Kevin Toth, God rest his soul, John McKenna, Henry Lorenz. There was some of the paid guys, John Caracciolo, Joe Miller, Sr., Tommy Mulligan, Eddie McGardle, Wilbur Sykes, Sal DeMarco. He was a postman and a fireman. John Dotsey, Jack Spar. He was like my big brother. These were paid guys. These are all people, Kevin Rogers, Ray Bada. Those are some names that you don't hear anymore. Mike Lombardi. They all should be, these guys gave it their all for the city of Long Beach for free. Some guys got paid, some guys didn't. The point making, Jimmy said, whether you're paid or volunteer, you can get dead just as quick. Long Beach volunteers train very rigorously. They go out to the Nassau County Fire Service Academy twice a year for department operations, where they train in live fire situations. And we also have a great training committee that trains these guys weekly and have monthly department trainings. Something that has changed in the fire service over the years is, the way we do things, but for the most part, at the end of the day, you put the wet stuff on the red stuff. There are different things because the materials that burn and the building construction has changed. Lightweight construction, truss roofs, that's what kills guys. I'll take a building like this and fight the fire at the old timber rather than the new construction any day. But I definitely wanted to mention some of those guys that were mentors to me and great firefighters and put their lives on a daily basis out for the city of Long Beach and your grandparents or whoever they might be, maybe yourselves at one time or another, that are no longer with us. I
was
have numerous citations.
Doug Eitz and Doug.
Dougie Ike, actually, bringing up the Reverend, he wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for myself. 522 Shore Road, I pulled him out of the building. I was leaving, my air pack ran out of air. It's on the top floor. It was a hell of a fire. We were there all night again. And I heard a bell. Back in the day, we had ringing bells like telephone bells. was an alarm when your air pack emptied out. I heard that, and I followed a hose line into an apartment building, into an apartment, or out off the hallway, and I found Dougie semi-conscious underneath the door that had fell on top of him. He was laying there to die. I drug him out to the hallway, drug him down the stairway, and a couple of guys came and got him from me. They took him downstairs. They flew him to the hyperbaric chamber in City Island, and were able to revive him and clean him up. And the Reverend retired from that fire.
He retired.
And him and I are still very close friends to this day. Actually, I saw him yesterday riding his bike down Park Avenue. And those are the things, for me, that's rewarding. You know, I mean, I'm sure every one of us has saved one or two, some more than others. You have to be in the right place at the right time. You can't make yourself a hero. It just happens, you know? And I don't think we look at ourselves as heroes. We're just doing what we love to do. But thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Are
My
there
neighbor
now,
was.
or have there ever been female firefighters?
Yeah.
Yes,
There's
Judy,
one in this
I'm
picture.
sorry, Judy Delamorte.
There's one in
She
the
was the first female on Engine 2. Paula
Kennedy.
Paula Kennedy,
Paula Kennedy, 6'2".
Trish Salinas.
Then we had
Sue Leonard.
Sue Leonard was on 2342. Now we have
first page.
a lot of females are in the rescue company. We have Trish Salinas is a captain of Engine 4. It's definitely became more so than not. When I joined the fire service in 1976, it was, and don't blame me for this, the police and the fire was a man's job. You understand what I'm saying? Like that's the way it was back in the day. But I don't care. If she's my brother, she's my sister. We had to change some terms from firemen to firefighters. But again, if she's the one that's in front of me or behind me when the hits the fan, she's my brother and my sister. You know, if she's outside as a lawn ornament, not so much.